I won't stop till I hear him say,
Okay, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another CYPRX video breakdown. In today's video breakdown, we are going to be going into an extreme detailistic perspective on de-dollarization and the petrodollar. I have a little bit of a display for you all. I've created some slides for you all going down the rabbit hole of what this all means for you as an individual, especially if you're based here in the United States, how detrimental this could potentially be to the United States economy. Something that I want everybody to really pay attention to. So, this is probably going to take me a couple of video breakdowns. I might actually start covering this here on the CyberX platforms. I do apologize ahead of the curve if my voice sounds a little bit deteriorated. I'm recovering from a sickness, so I apologize. I'm not talking too loud. So I hope you guys can hear me okay. We're gonna start going on the rabbit hole. I don't really see too much mainstream coverage about this. There are obviously, of course, fundamental articles that cover this, but when it comes to the mainstream media discussing this towards the general public, talking about this amongst the general public, it's really hard to come by. So I said to you all on the Twitter space, again, if you don't follow me on Twitter, make sure that you do so real fast. If you do appreciate videos like this and they do help you all out, understand the macro economy a little bit better, or maybe they give you guys some type of value, smash that thumbs up button. We do appreciate it, and subscribe to the channel. So I said to you all, I said, what I want to know is why the president, Joe Biden, and politicians alongside the Federal Reserve Bank and presidents are not warning the American people about the de-dollarization and the massive destruction coming to the financial system in America. Also, zero mainstream coverage on the BRICS nations coming together to form a global reserve currency. So that's what this video series is going to be about. I will link these videos and attach them to the YouTube debt crisis playlist that I have. So make sure that if you missed this or you want to, some coverage on some other debt crisis video breakdowns that I've created in the past, go check that playlist out. So with the de-dollarization, it's going to come alongside the ceasement of the petrodollar. We're going to get into that in just one second. So this article came up. This was from February 14th, 2023, and it says, Brazil sets the ball of de-dollarization. So as I'm going through all this information, and you all are either learning about this stuff for the first time, or maybe you've already researched this, take it upon yourself to keep this question in the back of your mind, right? Which is why politicians and the Federal Reserve banking presidents are not warning the American people about what's going on, right? So this article goes on to say just some key highlights from it. It says the new BRICS Development Bank based in Shanghai, China was established by the BRICS countries. It was formed as an alternative to the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. The BRICS Bank is an institution responsible for funding projects in 5 countries of the BRICS group. Now, if you're not too familiar with the BRICS nations, we're not going to specifically go into that, but more specifically going into detail on what it is that they're attempting to do right now. So highlighted right here, it says, but now the new president of Brazil, Lula da Silva, has expressed his distress regarding the dollar's dominance in Brazilian trade. He proposed that BRICS be used as a way to de-dollarize. He emphasized that BRICS was not created for defense, but as an offensive tool. De-dollarization, it goes on to say, BRICS countries have already undertaken a project to create a reserve currency to fulfill their economic goals. The currency would be formed from a combination of Chinese yuan, the Russian ruble, the Indian rupee, the Brazilian real, and the South African rand. So again, these are the nations of the BRICS community right here. We see China, Russia, India, Brazil, Southern Africa. Obviously, of course, the acronym BRICS stands for that. Some other interesting highlights from this, it says the network would decrease the reliance on the Western financial system. That was a major highlight right there. Then it also goes on to say the dollar may be ahead right now, but the slow and steady tortoise wins the race. So that was also interesting because I've said here on the CyberX platforms for quite some time that this global revolution, this digital shift, this financial infrastructure and the replumbing that's happening right now is going to take years to play out. But it is coming. And if you haven't seen some of the old debt crisis videos that we've posted on our platforms, go back and check those out. It'll explain into detail what's happening behind the scenes that, again, the mainstream media, like I said in this tweet, is not covering. So we have another article here. This came out last year in October, But interestingly enough, it says BRICS working to develop a new reserve currency to support my thesis and my claim. Again, asking why the president and the Federal Reserve banking presidents aren't saying or announcing this to the general public. It says actively studying mechanisms to exchange financial information to develop a reliable alternative for international payments. That's what the BRICS nations, the BRICS countries are doing, right? And it goes on to say, despite sanctions and swift disconnection, the Russian ruble has been the strongest performing currency in the world this year, gaining on average over 30% in value. That was interesting. Now, let's just take a second real fast. Again, like I said, I have some of these little tiny displays for you all here. What is de-dollarization for those of you, again, who might be potentially learning about this for the first time? I want to give you guys some information. And again, information is valuable in today's day and age. So pay attention. De-dollarization is a process through which a country or region reduces its dependence on the US dollar as a medium of exchange, store of value, or unit of account. In other words, de-dollarization is a move away from using the US dollar as the primary currency for international transactions and instead promoting the use of local or regional currencies, or in this case, the BRICS nations are creating a reserve currency that they can utilize between themselves, reserve currency that they can utilize within the BRICS nations, right? Now, a question I want you all to ask yourself, because people that aren't really too familiar with financial literacy, they don't really know what de-dollarization would, what kind of effect it would have on the global economy and whatnot. It would have a major effect on the global economy, which is, again, why I'm leading you all to ask the question, why aren't key politicians, presidents, regardless of the president of the United States or the president of the Federal Reserve banking system, talking about this? It's like not being covered at all, which leads me to believe, again, that there's something happening and ongoing behind the scenes that the mainstream media doesn't want you all to know. So I have here, what will happen to the US dollar if other nations start a de-dollarization process, which is obviously, of course, already happening via the fundamentals that I've just showed you all. If other nations start a de-dollarization process, the demand for US dollars may decrease, which could potentially lead to a decline in the value of the US dollar. Now, you may be asking, how will de-dollarization negatively affect US citizens? Now, it's not just going to negatively affect US citizens, but the globe, the financial markets as a whole. So I have here written down for you 1, 2, and 3. Higher prices for imported goods as 1. 2, higher borrowing costs. And 3, economic and political instability. So I'll go into detail a little bit for these. And again, if you are learning this for the first time, smash that thumbs up button because of the value that we provide here at CYPRX, going into detail about this stuff for you all. And maybe potentially share this video if you take something away from what it is that I'm saying. So higher prices for imported goods. If the value of the US dollar declines as a result of decreased demand, US citizens most likely are going to experience higher prices for imported goods, including consumer goods, raw materials, and energy. This in turn could lead to higher inflation, which would then erode the purchasing power of the US consumers and potentially reduce the standard of living. That's a massive negative effect, right? We also see higher borrowing costs. Now, if any other countries reduce their holdings of US dollar dominated assets, such as, for example, like US government bonds, it could lead to a higher interest rate in the United States, which could increase borrowing costs for US citizens, which include mortgages, car loans, and credit cards. So for you to go out and buy or borrow something, it's going to be an increase in the borrowing costs for us specifically here in the United States, which obviously, of course, again, would play a negative effect on you as an individual living in America. Now, last but not least, I have written down economic and political instability. De-dollarization in the long term could potentially lead to a reduction in US economic and political influence in the world, which spiraling down would have long-term implications for US foreign policy, trade relationships, and global leadership roles. This could then lead to increased economic political instability, which could then potentially harm the US citizens. Now, we also see at the same time this whole de-dollarization process happening. What do we also see? We see conflicts rising with China. We see them announcing potentially, what was that? That the general announcing that he sees a potential war outbreak of China in 2025. Now, you also saw in the previous article to kind of piece parts of the breadcrumb together for you all, saying that it's going to take time. It says right here, dollar may be ahead right now, but the slow and steady tortoise wins the race. So interesting enough how they're all talking about this 2025 timeframe and whatnot, while at the same time, these fundamentals are telling you that the de-dollarization process is going to take time. Here on the CYPRX platforms, we're just attempting to try and piece parts of the puzzle together for you all and wake people up to valuable information that, again, isn't commonly discussed amongst the general public. So I want to take your attention back to something that I retweeted out. Now I can't read this out to you all because on multiple platforms across the board, this will get taken down. But if you guys want to pause real fast and potentially read this right here, I'll read a part to you all. This is from Kim.com. Like I said, I can't read his full tweet. You can pause the screen real fast and you can read this. But it says that the US government and BRICS will end the US dollar as a reserve currency, making US empire collapse on its debt. So interestingly enough, right underneath of that, I have a retweet where it says, preparing for a massive devaluation of the US dollar, if Saudi Arabia joins Russia in the BRICS alliance, the two largest oil exporting nations will overthrow the petrodollar as a reserve currency. Now, that was interesting, and we're going to go into detail about that as well. This was interesting right here. This article, it says BRICS discussing decision on Saudi Arabia, Iran membership this year. This is massive, okay? And in part two, we're going to go into a detailistic perspective on why this plays an important role and how everything is kind of combined. I'm actually most likely to cover this in more detailistic perspectives. Going to have to cover this mainly on the Rumble page because YouTube is a little bit more monetized with what you can say. I'm more restricted on what you can say on the YouTube channel. It'll be better for me to cover this on the Rumble so I can actually give you guys my full opinion. With that being said, make sure that you are following us on Rumble. The link for that is in the description down below. We have a multitude of videos with an open-minded perspective that you all can go back and watch as well. So I will further cover this in broader detail with a more open mind on the Rumble page. But let's go talk about the petrodollar. So what is the petrodollar? Again, for those of you individuals who don't know what the petrodollar is, wake up and realize that there is a macro shift happening right now, a massive, massive macro shift happening right now to our financial markets. So what is the petrodollar? The petrodollar refers to the arrangement that emerged in the 1970s, where most international oil transactions are conducted in US dollars. This means that oil exporting countries such as Saudi Arabia and other members of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, most individuals, I'd say probably like 90% of average people don't even know what OPEC stands for or what any of these acronyms stand for. So you're learning something. You're way ahead of the curve if you're watching this video. Typically prices their oil in US dollars and receive payment in US dollars. So the de-dollarization and the end to the petrodollar, right? That is massive. Again, a global shift that we've been attempting to wake people up as to what's happening right now behind the scenes that, again, politicians and Federal Reserve banking presidents and whatnot don't want to discuss about or talk about to the mainstream media. You're going to have to take it upon yourself to go enlighten yourself on what's going on. So that's, again, what we're attempting to do here at CYPRX. So to continue, I want to bring question to you again. What will happen if the largest oil producing nations overthrow the petrodollar? Well, I have again a list here for you all. We'll go into detail on that. So, excuse me, sorry, my throat's so bad. I'm trying to make this content for you guys as I'm sick right now. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 being the decline in demand for US dollars. Okay. 2 being higher borrowing costs. 3 being geopolitical shifts. That's a massive one right there. And 4 being opportunity for other currencies to thrive. Obviously, of course, because if the United States dollar loses its dominance, there's going to have to be another global reserve currency that fills its place. So 1, the decline in demand for US dollars to decrease. If oil exporting countries price their oil in a currency other than the US dollar, it could then lead to a decline in demand for US dollars, as the countries that used to use the petrodollar would no longer need to acquire US dollars in order to purchase oil. Now, we also just recently saw at Davos, Saudi Arabia announcing that they will take money for oil that's not in US dollars, which is a massive statement right there, okay? Number 2, we have higher borrowing costs. So if there is a decline in demand for US dollars, it could then lead to higher borrowing costs, which would lead to higher interest rates in the US, which would then increase borrowing costs for US citizens, like things like mortgages. So if you want to go buy a house, your interest rates would increase. Now, a lot of people don't understand what an interest rate is and whatnot. So if you buy a house, right, and you have to pay back on that house over time, Well, your interest would increase on that. To go down the rabbit hole long term, that would obviously, of course, make your payments higher over time. Same thing with car loans and credit cards, right? Just to scratch the surface on what that would mean for you. A lot of people are probably listening to this that want to click off this video and say, "Oh, that's not a big deal. Whatever, who cares?" It's a major deal. It's a really big deal, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we also have geopolitical shifts. Overthrowing the petrodollar system, in turn, could lead to a shift in the balance of power in the world. Now, I've said in previous video breakdowns, especially in the debt crisis video series that we have on the channels, that there is a major shift happening in the balance of power in the world, and how the United States has been in power, that has held the global reserves currency status for 79 years now. And that has to change every 60 to 100 years. We're on the cusp of that happening in our life cycle. If you're, within the age of, let's just say, anywhere between your teens to, let's just say, 70, you're most likely going to experience that shift, right? It's happening. It's going to happen over the next decade, in my personal opinion. And then we have opportunity for other currencies to thrive. So if the petrodollar system is overthrown, it would then create opportunities for other currencies, such as the euro, the won, the yen, to gain more prominence in the global oil market, specifically leading back to Saudi Arabia, saying that they will take oil purchases and things outside of the United States dollar. So this is all extremely important surrounding the macro environment and everything that's happening right now. So this is the first video part of a multiple part of video series. But like I said, I'm probably going to have to cover this more in depth in the Rumble channel. I will attempt to cover it on the YouTube as well. However, I'm kind of split between biases where I can't really speak freely on YouTube, so I can only kind of scratch the surface in the form of fundamental value that I can give to you guys. Smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you're awake and aware to what's going on. Maybe you potentially already know about the BRICS, or maybe this is your first time learning about it. I highly advise that you all dig a little bit deeper as to the potential economic turmoil that it could cause if the dollar destabilizes, or if the de-dollarization process continues, or the depegging of the petrodollar and whatnot. Really pay attention to what's going on in the macro right now. There's a lot of things brewing up right now, and there's a massive shift that is coming, and nobody is safe from this. It is going to affect the globe. And just to revert back to the tweet that we started off this video with, why aren't politicians, key individuals like the president, spending more time on bringing this awareness to the general public? You have to ask yourself that question, right? Instead, they're talking about Chinese spy balloons and this and that. Like, that's the main thing that's happening behind the scenes right now, because it's not. Again, the mainstream media is meant as a tool, manipulative tool, to distract the general public from what's really going on behind the scenes. And this is a massive fundamental that is happening right now. It is not being talked about. It's not being broadcasted, and it's not getting enough attention. So here, as an influencer, this was my spiel. Starting off with the BRICS, going down the rabbit hole. I know that I haven't covered this in the past. I will start to cover this in the future, not only on the YouTube, but on the Rumble. Share this video breakdown. Let's wake some more individuals up. Blessings to you all. Subscribe. We do appreciate the love and the support. Smash that thumbs up button. It truly does help boost the algorithm. We cannot stress enough that you all take it upon yourself to do your own research. As always, be cognizant, be aware, and I will see you all in the next video breakdown.
I won't stop till I hear him say